You have to be pretty famous to get into the Steelers Hall of Honor, which began last year with the inaugural class, which created a lot of conversation and, yes, some controversy over some of the selections. It was a little unusual because I'm a member of the committee, as you may know. The Steelers wanted to put all the, not all, but almost all the Hall of Fame members already inducted into Canton in the inaugural class. And we added 4 others: Donnie Shell, L.C. Greenwood, Dick Hoke, among others, into that inaugural class. Andy Russell being the 4th. But from this point forward, and there will be other guys like Alan Faneca who will go into Canton, should have gone in this year, and eventually will, and some other players. But from this point forward, the Hall of Honor, Steelers Hall of Honor, which will be on display in the Great Hall, and hopefully there'll be a more visible place for it, I believe, inside Heinz Field, but we'll see what happens there. From this point forward, every year, minimum of 2, maximum of 4 new members will be added in each particular year's induction class. That includes this year. What is being added this year is that fans have a chance to nominate. Now, let me say this to you. Only members of Steelers Nation Unite, which is the official home of Steelers Nation, are eligible to submit nominations. If you're not a member, all you have to do to join for free is just go to SteelersNationUnite.com. You join up, it's free, and then you cast your nomination. If you're already a member, you go to Steelers Nation Unite, and you can submit your nominations. Just a couple of caveats here. You can nominate up to 3 people, but you can only vote once. So there'll be no stuffing the ballot boxes, okay? So that's how you can get involved. Now, this has already begun, and each Wednesday for the next couple of months, we're going to be telling you who this week's nominees are. And again, these will be submitted to the committee when I and my fellow committee mates begin our process for the induction class for 2018. Unlike last year, the fans, members of Steelers Nation Unite, will have an opportunity for their nominations to be considered. I don't know that they'll be that much different than the ones that we as the committee, the 5 of us, will come up with, but might be. So each week we're going to look at a couple, 3 of nominees from members of Steelers Nation Unite. That means you. Could be you by joining up and taking part. And the 2 names we have for this week, Bill Nunn and Rocky Bleier. Now, I want to take you inside the nominating process from last year. There are so many people to choose from. These are people, there were some certain parameters. They had to have spent a certain amount of time in the Steelers organization. It is eligible to coaches, players, ownership, general managers, personnel types. Yes, broadcasters for you Myron Cope fans. He was considered. And also, a point that a lot of us in the committee made, there are no, as long as they meet the parameters, I think they had to be gone from the Steel organization for 3 years, something like that. But very limited parameters, and the other parameter was minimum of 2, maximum of 4 going every year, unlike last year. That'll be the protocol from now on. There weren't going to be any wrong answers here. I mean, someone who fits the profile and had a significant contribution, you can't say, well, that's a dumb suggestion. No. I mean, some of the names that, we considered included Rocky and the late Bill Nunn and Art Rooney Jr., Dan's brother, the Chief's son, and Greg Lloyd, and Brett Kiesel, and Jason Gilden, and whoever else you want to come up with, Hines Ward. So there are virtually no wrong answers here. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Bill Nunn was an editor at the predominantly African-American newspaper, the Pittsburgh Courier. And he covered sports, but he also was kind of an amateur football scout. And just fast forwarding, Bill Nunn's contribution came when the Steelers scouting department back in the early 70s, at Bill Nunn's urging, and said, a lot of you in the scouting department, yeah, you go to Michigan and Ohio State and Alabama and Southern California, but there's an awful lot of good football players who are playing at these really small, predominantly black colleges. Back then, remember, until the mid to late 70s, black players were not accepted at mainstream Southern universities. Remember, Bear Bryant broke the color line. So a talented football player, he couldn't go. Amazing that we're talking about that just 40-some years ago. But he couldn't go to Alabama or Ole Miss or LSU. Now, a lot of the black players then went to northern schools. They went to Ohio State. They went to Michigan. They went to Nebraska. And there's ample evidence of those players leaving the South to go to those schools. But a lot of them, didn't want to go 2,000 miles away to college if they were from Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina. So what was their option? Their option was either go north or play for predominantly black schools like Alabama A&M. Where John Stallworth went. Like L.C. Greenwood, who went to Arkansas A&M. Like Donnie Shell, who went to South Carolina State. Interesting enough, that's where Javon Hargrave went. But back then, there weren't many choices. It was Bill Nunn who not only encouraged the Steelers to spend money scouting these guys, but Bill Nunn went on the scouting assignment to look at these guys. As an African-American, he had better access. And he is largely responsible for finding the John Stallworths and the L.C. Greenwoods and the Donnie Shells and the Greg Lloyds. Although things, changed by the 90s, certainly. But still, the inroads that the Steelers made in that regard put them way ahead of the curve other NFL teams. I'm sure that at some point Jerry Rice would have been found at Mississippi Valley State. But I would imagine the example the Steelers set in the 70s had at least something to do with that. Bill Nunn, aside from being he was a wonderful man, tell you stories, man, he was great. He was a great guy. But Bill Nunn is not only iconic in Pittsburgh Steeler lore, but he's iconic in NFL lore. He was a pioneer, showed people the way. Often takes someone like that. Bill Nunn was that guy. He came very close to getting in last year, meaning last year's inaugural Hall of Fame class. There were just so many. L.C. Greenwood, Donnie Shell, speaking of those two guys, connected to Bill Nunn. A lot of people think they should be in Canton. That's why they got in on the first class. Andy Russell, for all that he did and continues to do. Same thing with Dick Hoke, who not only was a player but a coach on 5 of the Super Bowl winners. Local guy. Jeanette still lives out there, went to Penn State. But Bill Nunn, his name was brought up. And again, there are no wrong answers here. If Bill Nunn's name comes up, and it will, I'm going to vote for him for all the aforementioned reasons. Rocky Bleier, I was actually the one who nominated Rocky at the initial meeting that we had. What can you say? His story is unique. We play the play-by-play clip of Rocky catching that touchdown pass in the Super Bowl from Bradshaw, and Kurt Gowdy's doing the announcing, and he's saying, Rocky Bleier, a highly underrated player for these Steelers. Well, he was, but not here. I mean, he was second to Franco and all these other Hall of Fame guys. But, of course, Rocky, who was a Rocky before there was Rocky in 1976 in the movie, Sylvester Stallone, had a special story. His Vietnam experience, how difficult it was for him to even make an NFL team, yet to become a star and a productive player. I think Franco would be the first to tell you he doesn't gain 13,000 yards if Rocky Bleier's not in the backfield with him. Rocky, of course, was sort of an add-on draft pick because the Chief loved Notre Dame. Rocky came from Notre Dame, being a war hero. I offered this opinion, I think shortly after The Rock retired. And by the way, speaking of great guys, I'm sure some of you have had some connection, experience with Rocky. He's as humble and terrific a human being as you can possibly find. But I offered this opinion after Rocky retired and said you could make the argument that he was the most popular Steeler in the dynasty years. He was a contributor, maybe not as major contributor as some of the others, but his story resonated so much with Pittsburghers. It would have resonated anywhere. Underdog, blue-collar guy. Then you put him in Vietnam, the veteran, medaled veteran, honored veteran. I think Rock got the Purple Heart, if I recall correctly. Comes back from the surgery, an everyman. Now, that story tells and resonates well in every community, but especially here. And because of all those things, I could make the argument that for any number of reasons, in its totality, Rocky was the most popular Steeler because of not only what he did, but who he was. Not only that, he was Jack Lambert's roommate, so that should put him in the Hall of Honor right there. That probably took a year off of Rocky's career. I nominated him last year, and I'll be supporting him again this year. But again, we have a maximum of 4. Those are the 2 nominees this week. We'll be doing this every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Those are the 2 nominees from Steelers Nation Unite. And again, if you would like to nominate someone for consideration, you have to join Steelers Nation Unite. It's free. Just go to SteelersNationUnite.com. You sign up there, and you can submit your nominations. I'll have the rules for you there.